Hi everybody, hope you're all doing well as we're getting a little bit closer to Christmas. Really excited to try this next one with you all. I've never had it before. I've been meaning to have it for a long time, and finally, the right circumstances hit and it just made sense to get this one. So today we're going to be trying Sazerac Rye. Sazerac Rye is a Buffalo Trace product. It is their rye mash bill. I believe they only have the one. And it's named after the cocktail. And the company that owns Buffalo Trace actually is the Sazerac company. It might be named a little bit different, but it's Sazerac. They own Buffalo Trace. And according to Sazerac at least, they get their name in this whiskey, actually, this rye whiskey from back in the 1800s when a bunch of saloons opened up in New Orleans that were disguised as coffee houses, and the Sazerac Coffee House would present this cocktail, the Sazerac, that was made using this whiskey or something really like it, supposedly Peychaud's bitters and absinthe. And there's a couple different recipes for it. Those are mainstays in them, those three items. And so again, supposedly this is the perfect whiskey to use for a Sazerac and the original one. So it's 45%, 90 proof, same as some of the other entry-level Buffalo Trace products like Buffalo Trace itself and Eagle Rare. And this particular bottle is a store pick from, hopefully that focuses for you, but from Bob's Liquor in Lake City. And what a store pick means is it's a single barrel selected by the store, representatives of the store. They get an opportunity to taste samples usually from different barrels. If they go all the way to Kentucky, they can taste straight from the barrel itself sometimes. But they taste different samples. They get to choose which one they like if they like them, and then buy the whole barrel. And they don't get the barrel shipped over, but they buy the barrel. The whole barrel gets bottled, and they get all those bottles. That's how it's supposed to work, at least. And then they get this fancy little sticker. Other products that do store picks or single barrel selects, they might do it a little bit differently, but Buffalo Trace, they put these gold or silver circle stickers with the store's label on it that indicate that this isn't their normal product. This is from a barrel that I believe would otherwise be used for their normal product for most of these distilleries, but is just the single barrel, whereas the normal Sazerac Rye would be batched together. So all of us, we're getting from this bottle right here from a single barrel that would be used to batch into Sazerac Rye normally, that was picked by Bob's Liquors. So this should taste largely similar to any Sazerac Rye that you could find on the shelf for about $30 or a little over. But there might be specific characteristics that are stronger in this bottle than in the standard Sazerac Rye that you might buy. That makes it really unique. And if you're going to buy a store pick, it makes sense to buy them here or there to see which ones you like. Sure, it's a little bit better if you have a point of reference so you can compare it to the standard release. But if you get really into this and you want to buy store picks, I would recommend you find a store where you consistently like their picks, because it means you probably have a similar flavor profile for what you prefer in a whiskey to the person who's actually picking these out. And it's just a greater chance that if you buy a store pick from that store or that person in the future, that you're going to like what they picked. So that's what I would recommend. But let's get to this whiskey. So if I didn't make it clear before, this is a rye whiskey. This is not a bourbon, so this is at least 51% rye. I don't know whether this is a high rye or a low rye whiskey, meaning if it's what I mean by that actually is it's a barely legal rye or not. So if it's right at that 51% mark or just a little bit above it, or if there's a significant amount of rye in here, it's hard to tell sometimes. Generally, I'm more of a bourbon drinker than a rye drinker. So if I drink a rye and it tastes to me like a bourbon, or it's similar to a lot of the whiskeys that I drink before, or a specific bourbon, they'll know, okay, this is probably a low or a barely legal rye. So let's find out with this one. Okay, so on the nose right away, this is a rye. This is not a bourbon, so this might be a higher rye content rye. Oh man, what is that? It's hard for me sometimes to distinguish just a general rye spice smell and try to pick out specific notes for it. I know I said pine in one of the last ones that we did. And I'm picking up on maybe a little bit of that, like leaning toward like a tad bit of like mint, or maybe, yeah, something like that. It just smells really fresh, like fresh and spicy, like you're breaking off like a pine tree and like smelling it in right away. And maybe someone's chewing gum next to you or something like that. Sounds gross, but in like a good way. All right, let's taste it. You know, the palate's very similar to the nose for me. Like it's the same sort of notes. It's just fresh is what keeps coming to mind. Like I get this sense of like freshness. I'm really sensitive in bourbons, at least, to there being like a presence of mint that comes from rye. There can sometimes be like a mint flavor from rye. And I'm picking up on something in this that is sort of leaning in that direction, but it's not like a sharp mint flavor. So it's not off-putting at all. I really like this actually, but it's sort of similar. Maybe it's a different kind of like mint note. I don't know. But I like it. It works. It's almost like it just kind of blends well with the rest of the whiskey. Well, this is a really interesting one. I don't have a ton more to say about it other than that I like it. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm leaving pine behind. I don't really get that, and leaning more into like some kind of like subtle mintiness. Maybe like clove a little bit. Maybe like a little bit of like licorice, but I'm not really getting a lot of that. I like it. This is definitely a rye. And I mean, low rye, like barely legal ryes can be good to sip on sometimes, but if you're buying a rye, sometimes you just want a rye. Like you want it to be distinguished from a bourbon that you're getting, whether it's mixing it in a cocktail or to sip. Like you want a different experience, and I think this really gives that, and I like it for that reason. Like this is a really specific, strong flavor profile that's different than anything we've had so far that I really like, and that I do actually, I think it's good for sipping. Like I enjoy this, especially if the right night hits, you're getting further into the winter, this would be great. But I think this would be really good in cocktails. Like a Manhattan with this, a Sazerac with this would be pretty good, I think. So I'm looking forward to trying one of those out. I might have to buy a bottle of these. There are a couple picks of Sazerac Rye. I mean, it's like mid-late November when I'm filming this, but there are a couple picks of Sazerac Rye store picks in different spots around the Seattle area. So if by the time you're looking at this video, if you're interested in getting something besides just a standard Sazerac, which you could find for around 30 bucks at most stores, if you want to get one of these store picks, just shoot me a text or something, let me know. And if I'm aware of there being a pick available in any stores nearby, I'll certainly let you know, because it could give you a slightly different experience that maybe highlights a note to this that you might like even more. But in any event, I think this is pretty good. I hope you do too. Cheers. See you tomorrow.